South Africa commemorated Workers' Day yesterday, but we're asking tonight if trade unions have much to celebrate. Union membership is declining globally, and South African unions have also been struggling to add members. We saw a union leader speaking there. To discuss, we're joined by the former General Secretary of the National Union of Mineworkers, Frans Baleni. Mr. Baleni, thank you for being with us. I've been looking at a Daily Maverick article that cites research that suggests only 23% of workers in South Africa are unionized. So that would mean a whopping 77% do not belong to any union. Does that sound right to you?
Good evening, Francis, and thanks for having me. And good evening to the viewers. Yes, it's right. In fact, my last check, it was actually 21.7% of trade members who are belonging to trade unions competing for a workforce of about 14.3 million. So it means those who are organized are in minority.
Yeah, that's 1 in 5 or 20%. So roughly, how does that compare to the early 1990s, say?
Look, I think in the early 80s and late 80s to the 90s, the numbers were slightly higher. And you would remember that, Francis, at the time, there was also the struggle cause, where trade unions were not just about helmets and boots, but also fighting for freedom. So the trade union agenda was also very, very political. And we could see the NUM, when it was formed in 1982, became the fastest growing union globally. And we can see now the number of trade unions are on decline.
All right, so the author here says that means the bosses are calling the shots. Do you agree? And what is your analysis? Why are workers going it alone and obviously not seeing a huge value in belonging to a union?
I think one of the biggest problems, Francis, is fragmentation within the trade unions. There are 254 registered trade unions. If you look at the mining or the unions which are on strike now, there are 4. So therefore, their power to fight the employer has been weakened because of fragmentation. In my period and 4 years in NUM, we have never went to any head of state to seek support on collective bargaining matters because we knew that our power, our strike would compel the employer to come to us and engage us.
Yeah. The NUM, I mean, it's an interesting case because that was cut hugely when AMCU came on the scene. So you're saying there are more unions competing for a smaller piece of the pie, effectively. But there must have been a reason why workers went to AMCU. Some analysts have suggested that AMCU had to come in stronger, had to be more radical, had to ask for more. And maybe that was even one of the factors leading up to the Marikana massacre. What do you think?
Well, AMCU came as a more radical trade union and obviously promising things which were impossible at the time. But that militancy has over time slightly died out. It came at a real cost. So many people lost their jobs. So many people were killed. But it's back to normality, like any other trade union now.
On the other hand, though, the workers must have felt it's often the critique that union bosses are interested in what they can gain. They sometimes become disjointed or sometimes far removed from the struggle of workers themselves.
Look, I think the bosses takes full advantage, Francis, of a divided workforce. As we have said already, fewer people belong to the trade unions. And we normally say, to bosses, it's important that they must take a lead. Don't wait for the unions because at the end of the day, these are your employees. So you need to ensure that the workers are paid very well, decent wage, better condition of service, so that you retain them and you get better profit and performance in the company.
Yeah. What you're talking now is about a win-win situation. When we see labor strikes in South Africa, it often seems like a lose-lose situation. Nobody will give in. Do you think there's more room for compromise? I mean, the competitiveness report produced globally lists South Africa as saying we've got among the worst labor relations in the world.
Look, collective bargaining is about give and take. I normally say in collective bargaining, there are no losers. It's only amateurs who are losing. But at the same time, parties must never make another party to discover that it can do without you, like in any relationship. So therefore, a strike should be limited to a number of days to avoid a situation where the employer can see other methods of producing production minus workers.
Do you think that unions are cognizant of the real economics at play? And because of these fractured labor relations, I think companies are surely to blame. But are unions to blame in not recognizing realities? We saw a retail company go down while workers were still demanding higher wages. That SAA strike was protracted and it got really ugly, with workers saying that the planes were actually unsafe. Then there was some sort of an agreement. It didn't seem like anybody won. And the next thing, SAA was liquidated anyway. Are the unions equipped, and are they prepared to look at the economics and accept that some companies are in fact struggling?
There are two issues here, Francis. There are situations where unions can be fighting until the last man, which means that there's a danger there you end up losing what you have. I know a situation where in 1 year, when I was a general secretary, I think it was Blayford Mine in Carltonville, where they came forward to say, although the Congress has said nothing less than a double digit, our mine is in trouble. We are seeking a variation that we accept less than the double digit. That's the first thing. The second issue is that with the inequality so high between the employers, the executive, and the workers, it makes an argument to say the company is struggling to be dismissed by workers because of the inequalities and the huge package given to the executives.
Yeah, and we've seen that play out with Sibanye-Stillwater as well. All right, finally, do you think that there's hope? Obviously, you see value in union membership. What can unions do to get more members and become bigger players in the South African economy?
I see value of unions, but the unions must be strategic, Francis. They must not be limited to their members and be selfish. They must, for example, fight for the voiceless, for the unemployed, the army of the unemployed. They must, if you take mining example, it must be the union which is fighting for the hosting communities to say these communities can provide service, so then wealth is created within these communities where the mines are producing. Therefore, you become strategic and broader and become a family for the rest of your stakeholders rather than being narrow-minded for only your members.
All right, thank you very much for your time tonight. That was former NUM General Secretary Frans Baleni. We appreciate it very much.